Okay, it takes a second. Okay. Hello, fellow nerds, geeks, and masterminds. Welcome to another Power Lunch episode in the 1000 Conversations About Our Future series. This is a project of the Ithaca Green New Deal, and it aims to engage you in a conversation about the future of Ithaca. And as always, I'm your lovely and charming host, Rebecca Evans, Sustainability Planner with the City of Ithaca. Also returning is the brilliant Lariah, who I'm hoping will be able to jump on shortly, who will be managing the YouTube chat. If not, I am happy to manage that. So if you have any questions or comments, we encourage you to interact with us via the chat function, and we will make sure that the speakers receive and respond to any and all of your questions. So today we're back with our regularly scheduled geeky, techie programming, and we're talking about my personal favorite topic, which is food. And while we know that the best way to have really tough conversations is while kind of breaking bread at a shared table, today we're actually going to rewind that even more and talk about how to bake that bread without the use of fossil fuels. So with us today, we have Chef Chris Galarza, founder and consultant with Forward Dining Solutions, a chef-first consulting organization that focuses on electrification of commercial kitchens. And Chef Chris is living proof that you can create culinary masterpieces without the use of natural gas. And with Chef Chris today, we also have the one and only Luis Aguirre-Torres, Director of Sustainability and Chief of Geek for the City of Ithaca. So Luis and Chris, welcome, and I will hand it off to you.
Thank you for having me. And that's a great intro. And I will say, like, it's totally apt because I am absolutely a nerd. I'm absolutely a geek. So it's nice to be part of welcomed by my fellow geekdom.
Well, Chris, it is an absolute pleasure to be here with you, man. We met, so people know we met a couple of months, probably a few weeks ago, maybe. And
it was like February-ish, January-ish.
Yeah. And I think it clicked because, we are pretty much alike, we're really interested in sustainability, but, we also have a life, and,
right.
But, I think I was thinking, I know a few people that, when I was growing up, I remember a few friends that wanted to be chefs, but none of them followed through. But you did. So I think you are officially my first friend, who is actually a chef.
That's awesome.
How did that happen for you? How is it that you ended up being a chef?
That's the thing. It's kind of crazy. So funny backstory. So I grew up in New Jersey, and I remember my mom when she was younger, and I've always had like a love for food, right? I love watching her cook. I used to get mad when she went to the grocery store without me. I would cry if she went to the grocery store without me. I'm like 5 years old, like throwing a tantrum because I wanted to sit up with my friends out where all the food is. So I remember she pulled me into the kitchen. She was talking to her friend, and she was so proud of like how like I already had like an idea of what I wanted to do in my life. And remind you, grew up in Jersey. So she said, why don't you tell, my friend here what you want to be when you grow up? I was like, well, Mom, it's kind of between two things. And she's like, what's that? I was like, one is a chef, right? I love food. And the other is a mop boss. And she was mortified. And I was like, and she's like, why that? I was like, well, you see all the guys in the neighborhood. They always got themselves put together. Well, so they must be doing something right in life. So I figured, why not? And after physical conversation, it never happened again. And somehow, without even thinking about it, years later, I became a chef. So that's kind of like the origin story. But really, truly, I just always loved food. Growing up in a house that was, we'll call it food insecure. Mm-hmm. It was always something I would gravitate towards to distract me from what's going on in the world, to kind of focus me. Honestly, I wouldn't really grasp concepts unless it was around food. So when I was in college, I finally understood what osmosis was, because my professor was like, if you want to learn what osmosis is, look at brining. And I was like, oh my God, that makes perfect sense. So like, it's like food has just always been, something I love and I gravitated towards. My mother would have loved that I became like a doctor or a lawyer, but this profession has been incredibly rewarding. And on top of that, it's given me the opportunity to be what I am today, which is, kitchen electrification expert. I mean, I'm a national expert in this. I just finished publishing the decarbonization guide with the William J. Worthen Foundation, along with my fellow co-authors. So, I mean, like, how did I become a chef? I mean, luck, passion, and
a serious conversation with your mom, right? I mean,
and a great conversation, a spirited conversation with mom.
Well, I need to say that your mom was right, man. This is the right profession for you. I think she could have done a better job and make sure that you were not a fan of the New York Yankees. I mean, other than that, I think she did a fantastic job.
I mean, when I grew up, it was the heyday of the Yankees. We had the Subway Series. We had the 4 out of 5 championships. I grew up never losing. So why would I want to be a fan of anything else?
I grew up never losing. Man, I don't know. Like, I don't know how many people can actually say that.
Yeah, I mean,
my life is very painful because I'm a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers, for example. And, that's a lot of pain, constant pain every year.
Yeah. But, lately, yes.
I'm jealous, man. You do what you like, for a living. You have a team that, actually, responds to your cheering. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I want to go back to the topic because we could be talking about the Yankees and the Steelers forever. But, it is so cool that you're a chef and that you decided to specialize in this. Mm-hmm. Right now in the city of Ithaca, what kind of crazy we decided to go, to go for it, like we were frustrated that, even though the federal government, has the speech going about, we're going to have a carbon neutral country by 2050 and all that, the reality is that we didn't see a lot of progress.
Right.
So the city of Ithaca was like, dude, do this. So we decided to come up with a strategy that is really aggressive, that, is receiving a lot of attention precisely because of that. And mm-hmm. we have a chunk of people rooting for us and a chunk of people exactly the opposite, wanting to see us fail. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about everything that we're trying to do, we're trying to electrify buildings, transportation, and inside buildings, we're talking about heat pumps for space heating. And then we get to the kitchen. Mm-hmm. We get to the part where we need to electrify everything using fossil fuels. And then when you tell people about that, they go like, nah, dude, you don't touch my kitchen. That's mm-hmm. mine. That's my domain.
Right.
So how do you go about that? Because you have, you as you mentioned earlier, you are who you are today and you're focused on sustainability mm-hmm. and being a chef. So that's kind of awesome. So how do you go about that? I mean, like in your experience, how do we get the conversation started about electrifying kitchens?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, it's tough to have that conversation because people will, for instance, recently there was kind of a beef on LinkedIn, I guess I kind of stumbled upon, where folks were saying, 97 out of 100 chefs don't want induction, don't want electrification. And they kept citing this over and over and over. So I asked them, like, where did this come from? They said, well, there was a kind of like a study done, and they asked the chefs, and I said, well, that sounds like flawed logic, right? They said, well, how so, right? There's 100 chefs, they're saying what they want. I said, well, how can you get somebody's opinion on something they've never experienced? Right. So that kind of like was the root of the problem, is that in this country, our opinion is colored by the fact that we've never experienced something. And we're, as a country, always been about maintaining the status quo. Mm-hmm. And maintaining the status quo is about trying to make sure things don't change and never really looking at how things can be done better. Never really looking about how we can make things a little bit more efficient. The old adage of work smarter, not harder. When you're trying to maintain tradition, when you're trying to maintain the status quo, you're not even ever looking at that. So how do you have this conversation is by introducing folks like myself, because whether we like it or not, for some reason, chefs have this, I don't know, almost an infallibility about them. Like, people listen to chefs. Yeah. Why? I don't know. Genuinely don't know, but people respect the chef's opinion. So to have a chef like myself that says, like, I've made this switch, I was also one that was like, absolutely not. It wasn't until I became educated myself. And that happened because my client wanted to make an electric kitchen. So you do what your client wants. And I was blown away.
So you were one of those?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, I can't see that, like.
I know, because I'm like an evangelist, right? But like, it's because I had the opportunity to actually cook on it. And I was like, this is another level. And I got the opportunity to see the savings for the campus. Started to see how much energy we were using, how much water we were using, how much, all this stuff, right? And then once we started getting into the construction of everything, seeing how everything was being put together, the thought that went into every step. For instance, my kitchen, it wasn't just we were collecting the steam and exhaust and putting it out there into the atmosphere. We were actually capturing that and using it to heat the building. So not even our steam and heat and smoke was wasted. So the attention to detail and the care started to really push back on my notion of, this is the way we do things, right? This is the way tradition is kept up. And it's almost kind of made me to the point where, like, I'm allergic to tradition, as my wife says, because I just always try to think now, like, all right, this is how we've always done it, but why? Why do we do things what we do things? Why are things the way they are? And could there be a better way? So kind of forcing the conversation, it means to force people to ask tough questions and having an expert there like myself to be able to answer their questions. So it's tough.
It is tough to start a conversation because, I mean, somebody who knows about food, who knows about cooking, had trouble getting his head around, this change.
Right.
I can see why other people may, but at the same time, I think you're absolutely right. People are afraid of change every time, and sometimes they say, well, traditionally this has been done, but the truth is, this illusion that, the status quo is never going to change, it's just wrong.
Right.
So things are moving forward, and the reality is that climate change is here. We're feeling the effects of that thing, and we can do so much about it. And I think what you're focusing on, can take people, businesses, the whole country forward in a very important way. So, like, for example, in the city of Ithaca, we've been talking to some business owners and some restaurant owners, and we talk to them about this, and they always go like, oh man, I don't know, because they think that the way they cook is going to change. They think that the flavor is going to change. It's going to be affected somehow by this. What would you say to that? I mean, does that actually happen? Do we need to worry about that?
No, I mean, the worry again is because change, right? And the worry is also, it's hard. Like, if you don't know how to do it, it's hard to make this change. So my pushback on that is, like, what I was just speaking to a bunch of culinary schools yesterday, and they said, like, these students said, like, but isn't it, like, hard for these people to make these changes? And I said, absolutely it is. But, like, I'm a first generation American. You're an immigrant yourself. My mom made a decision to come here, not because it was an easy decision, not because it would be easier here, but because it was the right thing to do if she wanted a better future for her children. And it takes work. It's hard, but nothing in this country was ever accomplished because it was easy. It wasn't easy to stand up to the British. It wasn't easy to push back against the Nazis in World War II. It wasn't easy to fight these wars. It wasn't easy to maintain this country while we were starting out. It wasn't easy to do anything, to rebuild the Empire State, the Twin Towers, or to push back against global terrorism, or now with Russia. It's not easy to do all these things. Now, it wasn't easy to go to the moon, but it's something that's necessary, so we do it. Right. And if we're going to continue to call ourselves the leaders of the free world, we need to act like leaders. So, sorry, the question just came up. So what I was telling these students was, don't wait for change to happen, because the climate change is happening. Mm-hmm. Educate yourself, begin to take things forward, make the hard decisions now, because your life's only going to get better later.
Oh, absolutely. And I like these comparisons that you just made, because we frequently talk about the Ithaca Green New Deal in that way. It's a mission-oriented collaborative approach to carbon neutrality. And that means we need to work together on achieving something that is practically impossible, right? And it's just this massive transformation that we need. And we need to start with people's minds. People need to believe that there is a better future behind these changes, and that these changes are going to open the door to better things. So the way you present this is just wonderful, and I really like it, man. And I'm gonna, interrupt the flow a little bit, because I have a question that I want to ask you right now. And so I imagine that you occasionally have had to cook for like 100 people, or big banquets or something like.
Oh yeah.
Would it be different if you are doing this with induction cooking? I mean,
yeah.
It would be. So how would that be different? How would it be affected?
So how it would be different is you'd be able to get the food out faster in larger quantities with a cooler kitchen. That's the difference, right? Cooking fundamentals don't change. Doesn't matter if you're braising over coals, braising over like a fire pit or sorry, campfire. It doesn't matter if you're braising in an oven. Doesn't matter if you're braising in on a gas range, on a gas grill, or induction. A braise is always a braise, period. Cooking fundamentals don't change depending on your medium. So you talked about, will the flavor change by cooking without gas? Not really. I mean, gas is an odorless, colorless, and flavorless toxin, period. So there is no flavor that you get from gas. What folks consider the flavor, they're usually talking about the carcinogenic burn off of fat hitting the flames and rising back up, which isn't really that good for you.
Yeah, when you put it like that, it just sounds horrible, man.
It's exactly what it is. Yeah, food science is one of my passions. But what we do love is those hash marks, right? Like the caramelized beef that was or chicken, or whatever it is that was on the grill that got those hash marks. That's called the Maillard reaction. It's the caramelization of the protein of whatever it is you're cooking. So I would argue you get more flavor cooking on a flat top, on a griddle, and getting 100% coated with that Maillard reaction, as opposed to just these little thin bars and stripes of that same caramelization.
Wow,
that's me.
And you made the point about the cooler kitchen, right? Because I do imagine that there is normally high temperatures when you are cooking for 100 people, and everything is on at the same time. So about the cool kitchen, then. So that is because induction doesn't produce the same level of heat and it doesn't rise the same way.
Correct.
Is that the basic principle?
Correct.
Oh,
yeah. Let's kind of. So I talked about a little bit about induction. Let's kind of, if allowed, kind of explain the differences. So when we talk about electric cooking, we're not talking about the coils or the glass tops that like glow red. What we're talking about is induction technology. So induction, the way it works is. Let's just double back. So electric, the way it works is by converting the electrical energy into heat energy, and then from there heating up the air or in this case like a pan, and kind of putting that energy out that way. More efficient than gas. Gas ranges are about 35% efficient. The electric, we're looking at about 40, probably 60 on the high end. Induction is about creating this eddy current by putting electrical impulses through a tightly wound copper coil, creating this electromagnetic current that oscillates the ferromagnetic molecules in the pan to make the pan itself the heating element. So nothing else is getting hot, not the air and not the surface, only what's in contact with the pan, which means you can get 93% efficient, or on average 85 to 93 to the pan, which is far more efficient. And if you're looking at dollars and cents, for every dollar you spend on gas, at best, 65 cents is being thrown away.
Yeah.
For every dollar you spend on induction, 7 cents is being thrown away.
That is crazy. And I think you just make a wonderful point there, because, we look at this from the point of view of waste energy, like 70% versus 3%,
Yeah.
like this is...
And where's that 70% going? It's going into your space. Now your home or your restaurant is much hotter. And now you're paying for more electricity to cool down that space or to exhaust that space when you don't have to. The truth is that this technology is a way to continue our way of cooking while being stewards of the planet. So, what does the cost comparison look like? So there was actually a cost comparison done by Frontier Energy, and a 6-burner gas range at 35% efficient, which I have to stress, folks, the 35% efficient that I'm talking about, that's under lab conditions. When it's actually in the field, we're looking high teens, low 20s. But in lab conditions, assuming you're running at 360 days a year, 15 hours a day, at $1 per therm, so $1 per 100,000 BTUs, it's going to be around $1,123, I believe the figure was. So if you were to do the exact same, but for a 6-burner induction at 17 cents per kilowatt hour, at the time was a national average. Now I think the national average is like 13 and change. That would be $9 cheaper to run. So the cost is about the same. Now, what does that mean as far as your environment? It means you're no longer exposed to the contaminants of burning natural gas, which we're talking carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, formaldehyde, and other PM 2.5 like soot, smoke. Your pans are no longer going to be covered in soot, which means it won't have the uneven cooking or the warping, so now your pans last longer. Your kitchen is now running a lot cooler as opposed to in the high 90s, low 100 degrees in your commercial kitchen. We're talking in the high 70s, low 70s, because when we studied my kitchen at Chatham, the outdoor temperature was 85 to 90. The indoor temperature next to my ovens in the kitchen was never hit 74 degrees Fahrenheit that week.
Holy man, this is amazing.
Yeah, why that's important is because ASHRAE did a study that determined what thermal comfortability was. And on the high end, it's 82 degrees Fahrenheit. Uh-huh. So OSHA is developing regulation. This is about to take hold in California, and it's going to happen around the United States as well, because the federal OSHA is looking to enact the same thing. So the internal temperature of the working space, they're looking to kind of curtail those hazards for all industries, warehouse, restaurant, but it doesn't matter. And that threshold will be 82 degrees Fahrenheit. So if that passes, every kitchen in America that uses gas will not be compliant and subject to regulatory action. So this is not just a way of just to say, there's a bunch of hippies trying to take my gas. Like, these are changes that are happening based on science and data, based on, taking care of the workers. Now, you may be thinking, why would we do that? Like, things have been working for so long. Why would you want to change that? Well, what the pandemic did was that it highlighted how things are not working properly. Don't believe me? Folks had 18 months to 2 years to figure out what they want to do with their lives, and realize that they don't want to work under those conditions, under that pay. They figured out how to pay people more. They still can't find workers. Now, we can no longer hide behind the excuses of a bunch of lazy people hiding behind unemployment, because unemployment ran out last September.
Yeah,
we're still seeing work shortages because people made the change and got out. Now, we changed how we pay people. Now we need to change the environment in which they work in. Now you don't have to be, it's status quo to cook under conditions that are so hot, or putting yourself out there if you have asthma, having a hard time breathing, or a survivor of COVID who, as we know, severely diminished lung capacities. Now you can work in an environment that's cool, that you can breathe clean air. And we could take that a step further. If you're in a school setting, the air you have in your space is the same air that the students will be breathing. And we know that environmental factors are the chief perpetrator of childhood asthma. So if you can control or kind of eliminate those contaminations at the home and at the school, you can, in theory, bring down those rates, which currently is about $50 billion of health costs to the American families. So, like, again, it's like throwing a pebble into a lake and just seeing the ripple effects of just changing the kitchen.
So how long you been doing this? Because, I mean, what you have is this crazy encyclopedic knowledge of what's going on with induction cooking and all of these elements. And let me actually combine that with another question. Like, right now in the city of Ithaca, like, with all of these changes, I think the first one that we're looking into, and we're seriously looking into this, but it came in at the same time that we were promoting electrification. There is a conference center that's been built, and they are seriously considering electrifying the kitchen. I don't think anybody disagrees with why we need to do that. It's all about whether it's practical, whether we're going to have whether there is precedent. So do you know anybody who has done this? Any conference center or major campus or any place that has transition to full electric cooking?
Yeah. So first and foremost, this isn't new. The induction's been around since the 70s, And there have been restaurants and kitchens converting to electric for years. In fact, overseas, they are about 30 years ahead of us. Every international competition, culinary competition, is electric. So
really?
the Bocuse d'Or, the Culinary Olympics, all of them. So if you're an American competitor, you're already at a disadvantage because you don't know the technology. So on top of training to, compete against the best, you also have to learn the technology that you're going to be using. And now all your recipes have to be retooled to work on this new technology because you don't know how it works, Yeah. So, but in America, who's made the changes? Alinea, the French Laundry, Pineapple and Pearl, Per Se in New York. Like all the top restaurants have made this change. Campuses, Chatham University, Eden Hall, Castilleja in Palo Alto will be making the switch. McAteer Culinary Academy is already all electric. There's a few more in the works. There's more and more restaurants being built. There's some that are in New York that are all electric, and they loved it. In fact, Melissa Clark just wrote an article about induction cooking that cites these restaurants. So there are more and more places adopting it. And in fact, I forget the group. I probably have it in notes from a previous podcast. But there's an arena group that has kind of made the announcement that they're no longer going to be using gas in any of their arenas globally.
That is so cool because we need to have examples, concrete examples of people who have done the switch. And I think you identified so many environmental benefits that could come with it, economic benefits that come with it, and let alone the responsibility that we have, to promote this change. But, we focus a lot on restaurants and, conference centers, for example, but also people want to know, like, is this something, for home? Can I
for sure. And to touch on my last point, I just kind of went back in my notes. The Oakview Group made that announcement that in all their arenas globally is going to be all electric. But
that is a big change. That
for sure. Oh my God, yeah. So yeah, can this be done in the home? In fact, it's already being done in the home. I think I was reading an article. I think it was on BuzzFeed News where they were talking about the health effects and how induction could help mitigate those health effects. Kind of referencing the Stanford study and things like that. And for those of you who don't know the Stanford study, it came out sometime in January, at the end of January. It kind of showed that that methane is released just from the equipment being off. It leaks out to the tune of like 1% to 2%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for all the gas stoves in the country, it comes to the tune of the equivalent of 500,000 cars on the road per year.
Okay.
Just from your equipment being off in your home. Now, what does that mean for the environment? Well, we're always talking about CO2. Methane is 85 times greater of a danger to climate change than carbon dioxide, than CO2. So that's important. But this, I think, mark my words, this is going to be the first time you see the home chef influence the commercial chef, because there are more and more manufacturers are having a hard time keeping induction on the shelves. My good friend Rochelle Boucher of Kitchens to Life works at a Monarch premium appliance in San Francisco. They're having a hard time keeping up with the demand.
Really?
Because folks are just they're what she calls induction curious, right? And they're coming in, they want to know more about it, or they're ready to buy it, and it's going so fast. I mean, December alone, one of the sellers sold like $250,000 just in induction equipment. And
wow.
Like that's just one location in one city across the United States. It's going like gangbusters. So chefs are really slow to take up on this technology. And what's going to start beginning to make the change is when they go to a home with induction and say, oh, it's garbage. And then the homeowner goes, actually, it's not. Come check it out. They cook on it. They go, wow, this is cool. Or they see the conversation we're having now. They're learning some of the stats and they're seeing, oh, there's a chef that actually is talking about this. In fact, Eric Repair of Le Bernardin has all induction in his home.
Oh, well, I like that guy. I watch Top Chef a lot, so I like that guy.
He's great.
Wow, this is cool. I mean, we're trying to do this at home. You know, my wife and I, we've been looking at, you know, the alternatives. And we actually bought, you know, a cooktop, and we've been cooking on that. And, you know, fortunately, all our pots and pans work perfectly well with that. And we don't see a difference in terms of how we prepare or how the food tastes right now. And it wasn't very expensive. So that's the other thing, right? I mean, we can actually do this shift without bankrupting anybody in the process.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, like and there's also, you know, public, like there's grant programs out there, or there's rebate programs out there depending on where you're at. In fact, this summer we're hopefully going to start developing our own for the state of Pennsylvania. So, I mean, there's a way to kind of help offset those costs, and even the cost of operation pays for itself.
And I think there's a question of what do you do? Okay, let's say that I switch like my furnace, my water heater, my cooktop. I mean, I switched to induction. What do I do with the old one? And I mean, there are different programs, but I mean, do you know anything? I mean, for example, what are you doing in Pennsylvania? What are you guys are doing with that?
So that's a great question. That's one that I've kind of come up with some ideas. I think the low-hanging fruit is, if there's an entrepreneur out there, taking the equipment and repurposing it for, like, or kind of refurbishing it to induction. Like that, to me, like, instead of just throwing it away, but you can do something with it. But also there's folks like Renovation Angel that they'll do things with the equipment. They'll take it, instead of putting it into a landfill, they'll kind of give it a new life, or figure out a way to use the parts for something else. But like there's companies out there that like work by taking old equipment. What I would love to see is kind of like a buyback program, and then have, you know, a manufacturer be able to retrofit or be able to put in induction into that infrastructure. Because I think it'd be really cool to see, like, someone get rid of their cool, like, 1950s stove, and then just someone convert it to electric.
Oh,
but
man,
I mean,
that would be so cool.
It would
right?
be cool, right? You know, making old new again. I think that's the best way to do it. But like to upcycle things, to me, would be the best way. Right now, I mean, that's something that is being discussed. But again, in this country, it's far too early for all these programs to be up and running. So I'm hoping that, you know, us being able to kind of talk about these things hopefully can inspire somebody to take up that mantle, or, you know, us being in the room, be able to inspire somebody in government to help kind of do something about it. Because I don't want to just put this into a landfill.
Yeah,
doesn't
exactly.
help anybody.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense, especially we're trying to help things out. And, you know, but it's true. I mean, in Ithaca, we actually made a sport out of, you know, repurposing, you know, materials and resource recovery. We have the Finger Lakes Reuse center that basically takes on anything, and instead of throwing it away, they fix it, they turn it into something useful. And it's wonderful to see that. So I mean, I'm sure that they will jump at the opportunity to do this. And I think, I don't know if you have seen this, there has to be an opportunity to do, you know, agreements. For example, the role of government. I mean, can we actually participate in having agreements for bulk purchasing of induction cooktops, for example? I mean, is there any way that we can have a role and help people get their hands on these devices, these appliances, sorry?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, like in Southern California, Edison, for instance, they have a program that you can go and test the equipment on yourself. In fact, you can even they'll loan you induction burners for you to go home and test out, kind of like a library. You know, they give you a library book, you can get an induction range and just go home and play with it. So there's induction hob, to use the correct word there. But yeah, so there's programs out there designed to allow you, mostly on the West Coast, to allow you to kind of check it out, play with it yourself, see how it works, and then, you know, before you commit to actually buying something. Hoping we could do something like that on the East Coast as well. You know, as an East Coaster, I'm trying to kind of have us catch up to our West Coast friends.
Well, I think you just committed yourself to partner with me to put that in motion.
Let's do it. I
think there is an opportunity there, and we have to. There's a question that people have on the chat, which is about how the menu may change. You know, how does a move to induction actually change the menu offerings?
A great question. It doesn't really have to. It doesn't change at all. Because, like I said, there is nothing in the kitchen that can't be converted to electric. And in fact, if you look at your kitchen, about 90% of it is already electric, right?
Yeah.
And again, referencing back to the talk I had with the students, imagine you had a time machine and you took back your we call it a RoboCoop. I guess that would be your food processor back to like 1400s Mexico. They would throw the molcajete off the cliff. They'd be like, this is so much better, right? We now have induction technology, which are far beyond what gas can do. And we're like, no, I'd rather hold on to this molcajete. Right, that's a mortar and pestle, guys. So what does your menu offerings change? So if say you go to a stadium, right? What do they have there? They have burgers, they have nachos, they have whatever the case is. So that means a flat top, fryers, ovens, all that's electric. Like there's electric grills, there's electric broilers. In fact, Burger King is going to be converting their broilers to electric. There are electric pizza ovens. In fact, there's ventless electric pizza ovens and ovens. Like there's nothing in the kitchen that cannot be converted.
Wow, this is. I mean, that. Yeah. I don't know, man. That opens the door for a real transformation. Make this happen and to make this count for real. Yeah. And you are such a geek for these things. Man.
Oh, dude,
that is so cool.
To be perfectly honest, I opened the company in the summer of 2019. And I had no intention of opening up this company. I just learned about induction, learned about sustainability because I was immersed in it at the university, and I gave tours. I talked about it. I learned as much as I could on the subject because when we built the kitchen, I remember this so clearly. I talked to my vendors and I said, hey, I don't know how this equipment works. Can you teach me? And they go, chef, I mean, we just sell the equipment. You're the expert. You figure it out. And the very next day I had to cook for 300 people. So I never wanted people to ever do that again. So one of the things we do is offer trainings. But we opened this in 2019, pandemic hit, and we opened it because Microsoft asked us to kind of go and help give our insight to their project, because they're building an all-electric project out in Washington, in Redmond, their HQ. So then we opened it, pandemic hit, gave me time to think about what I wanted to do and how I wanted to best affect change, because I talk about the stuff ad nauseum to people who come to the university, but you're only getting a few people. I wanted to really affect change out there because I know that there's not a lot of time. So I've only been doing this full time for like a year and a half, maybe. So like, I mean, it's just all up here is just because I was so nerdy and I just wanted to consume knowledge, right? So it did, and I'm just glad that this can finally help people, right? Normally I'm just geeking out to people who don't want to hear it. Now there's people who want to hear it, who have questions. I'm happy to give my expertise on it.
Yeah, well, I can say for sure, based on this conversation, welcome home. This is where the nerds live. So it sounds like you definitely have a second home here in Ithaca, and if you don't, you should soon. So I'm going to start wrapping us up here.
Soon. I feel like we just started.
I know.
Yeah, it went really fast. Yeah.
We had some really, really great questions from the audience. So
I hope we hit them all.
I think we did.
Okay.
And thank you to everybody who did submit questions. If we didn't cover any of them, we will make note of the chat and we'll follow up. But I have one last question for you, for both of you. We work in this, really tough and sometimes demoralizing field of sustainability. And, understandably, we all have bad days, whether we work in sustainability or not. But, the pressure of stabilizing a climate so that, humans can survive another day carries a certain level of stress and anxiety. So I want you to imagine, and just imagine, I want you to go no farther than imagine, you're having one of those really bad days. It's been really disappointing. Things really haven't been going your way. And you get home and you are going to have that one meal that's really comforting, that makes you feel really warm and safe and cozy and ready to pick up this sometimes really hard work the next day. So 1, what is that meal? And then 2, what is the memory that you are associating with that meal that makes it feel so warm and safe and cozy?
Wow. For me, it's probably a little stereotypical because I'm Brazilian, but rice and beans with a fried egg on top. Honestly, the most comforting thing is rice and beans with platanitos, with fried plantains and some chicken or a fried egg on top. That's something that we ate all the time growing up, and I love it because it's cheap food, right? And we grew up very, very poor, and it's a kind of way for me to kind of connect back with the way the things were back then and remind me where I came from and give me the motivation or the drive to keep pushing forward. So no matter how bad things are, I'm never going back to the way things were. So that meal kind of is soul food for me, right? I ate it growing up my whole life, and it's also serves as motivation as well.
Man, how do you follow that, Rebecca? Like, seriously, like whatever I say is gonna sound stupid.
I mean, also a good craft beer.
Okay, I can do that. No, I think, yeah, I guess for me it is, arroz con pollo and salsa verde. That would be, like, that would bring me back home. That would bring back the memories of, same thing as you, Chris. How it all started, how things are going, and now with this. I think when I was growing up, probably similar to you, there was this huge question mark about what the future was going to be like.
Right.
But now we are much more in control. We can make things happen. We can turn the city of Ithaca into a different path, sustainability. And I think the work that you are doing beyond Pennsylvania, so gives us a better view of, what the future could be like. And thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
I will say, you opened the show talking about, how, you guys just kind of took it upon you. I think if the pandemic taught us anything, it's that we need to find the positives in things. And as terrible as the pandemic has been, what it did, and as terrible as things have been like the last few years, what it did is it showed us that we don't have to wait for our leaders in the federal government to get something done. We can take action and make changes happen based on what our local leaders are doing. And in fact, as a self, you can affect more changes to where you spend your money than who you vote for every 4 years. So enact change. If you want something really positive, I recently read that for us to stop the effects of climate change, not reverse it, but stop it, it only takes 3.5% globally to make that change. And if we as a nation stop right now producing emissions, that's 15% of the global emissions. So we can enact change on a global scale in our communities here in America. It only takes a few.
Man, that's when you drop the mic right there. You drop the mic and walk away. Because, no, I thank you for that. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, on that note, there's not a lot more to add. So thank you everybody for joining us again for another Power Lunch. We will be back as always. And it sounds like there were some additional questions that were in the chat. So if anyone that's watching has questions, we are taking note of them. And we will follow up. And of course, you're welcome to reach out to us at our 1000 Conversations email or website. And hope everyone has a really, really excellent Tuesday, second day of spring. So hope you're already taking your allergy medication and ready to enjoy the sunshine. We'll see you next time.
Take care, everybody.